Dustin, let's kick things off here with some more NFL suspensions in which I imagine I'm going to have differing opinions than you guys. Maybe not, but I think maybe I'm going to have some differing opinions than you guys.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're under a rock, you probably have heard this one, at least if you follow this podcast. We had 5 players suspended for violating the NFL's gambling policy of varying things. Four were Detroit Lions players. Another was one of the Washington Commanders players. 2 of them were suspended indefinitely for betting on NFL games. And we also had an ESPN report that was saying that some Lions staffers were also let go around the time of all this was happening. That was not in the league release and not widely reported, but that is also in there. So it's there's a lot. We've had a few of these. We've had a couple players famously suspended since the betting ban has fallen in the United States. We also had a coach for the New York Jets suspended as well around all of this. So, but this was a lot all at one time, and there's a lot of questions for me that come out of this, and I'm not sure what the answers are, but there are, is the NFL doing enough to educate players on their policy? The other thing that comes out for me is the NFL really alone in this? I know there are just more NFL players, but it's hard to believe we really haven't. The NFL is finding these with some kind of regularity. Are we to believe that this is not happening in other sports, or are they just not being found or not being reported? So there's a lot to unpack, I think, from all of this.
Yeah, Adam, I'm going to go ahead and give my spiel here so that you can, which I assume will be you refuting it. So I want to go ahead and just put it out there so you can try and rip it apart. With all of this, I am certainly for the NFL cracking down on these guys betting on their sport. Listen, I've been in NFL locker rooms, and this is well before legalized gambling happened. There's no gambling stuff all over NFL locker rooms. As far as getting the message out, this message has been gotten out to these guys for years and years and years and years. Like, do not gamble in the NFL. Do not gamble in the NFL. Do not gamble in the NFL. There's signs everywhere. There's all this stuff like that. So if you're betting on the sport, I have no sympathy for you whatsoever. We all have things that we can and can't do within our respective jobs, and you take on those responsibilities whenever you decide that is going to be the line of employment that you're going to go into. But the nuance here with the Jameson Williams thing, where 6-game suspension for doing it, for not betting on the NFL, but just betting inside of a facility in which, had he walked 5 steps outside the door and sat in his car, would be perfectly fine. But the fact that he was 5 steps inside of a building, I think now we are getting a little too wackadoodle here. I mean, if you want to make a point, don't do this. Fine him, and then if you do this a second time, sure, you come with some sort of suspension or something. But not betting on the sport and the just the physical location of which he did this, which, by the way, the rule is not inside of team facilities or on team travel. So in theory, not on an airplane or not on a bus or whatever, or something like that. To me, seems a little wackadoodle. And also the 6-game suspension. We've seen guys get DUIs and domestic violence stuff and things like that have gotten less games than 6 games for, what I consider to be a pretty harmless thing, because it was found to be not on the actual sport itself, just on a different sport. And the location was the crime here. I think the NFL, while it's great they're catching guys betting on the sport, I think the other thing, they've kind of gone a little bit too far in one direction. What say you?
Matt, you know what my reaction generally is to these things, that you cannot have tolerance, you cannot have leeway, and you cannot leave any gray area for players, staff, coaches, etc. to interpret these things. And that being said, this is an asinine decision about Jameson Williams. Absolutely asinine. Being located in a team facility should not matter at all. What have we done with NFL stadiums? What have we touted with NFL stadiums? That we're putting sports books inside them. We're talking about putting sports books inside NFL stadiums. We're talking about putting them on the grounds of NFL stadiums, but we're going to draw some sort of line about where bets that otherwise would be legally placed have been made. That's ridiculous. And the idea, I guess, is that you don't want this to become a widespread activity within the facility among the team. I got a news flash for all of you.
Right.
Players have been betting for years on years on years. You know what they did to get caught this time? They used the same apps that you're partnering with to make money. And so the only crime they did was using the league endorsed platform to do the thing that would otherwise have been okay in a location that you've deemed for whatever reason isn't okay. So if the idea was, well, we want to prevent inside information, right? Like if you're doing it from inside the facility, you might have inside information. Well, if it's true that Jameson Williams was betting on college games, I don't think he had any information about what was going on in a college game from inside the Lions facility. So I understand completely when it comes to Quintez Cephas and the other suspensions that were handed down for betting on NFL games. And I think we have a second point that we can probably explore as we go on here. And I actually think it's as concerning, if not more, that Lions staffers were ultimately let go over this. And not that they were let go, that they were gambling. Because maybe with the players that you could argue that in some way that they were unclear. They have another job, right? Like their job is to play. Their job is not to pay attention to these things day in, day out. The Jameson Williams thing could happen because it wasn't clear on where the location was that he gets to place the bet. Staffers are supposed to be the ones who know these things. They're supposed to be the ones who are up to speed on everything because in a lot of ways, they're the ones who are setting the guardrails for the organization. They're the ones who are setting the standard for the organization. But when it comes to guys like Jameson Williams getting caught up over where they placed a bet, when the NFL's goal has been to make this as widespread, pervasive, and available to its customers as is possible, that makes no sense at all to me.
Dustin, so to play devil's advocate here, there's going to be some people listening out there and go, hey, buddy, rules are rules are rules are rules, all right? And you follow the rules, and that's the damn rules, and rules are rules. And to that, I will say, okay, fair. That is fair. I guess my whole thing in this is like the punishment itself just seems like the NFL has gone overboard. Like, listen, we have praised leagues and some of these providers and all these different things, like for being proactive in things and getting out in front of things and laying down the law when the law needs to be laid down. But if we are talking about a 6-game suspension for a guy not found betting on the sport itself, which again, we all think would be bad because yes, there could be inside information in all of that. But because he was physically located inside a building in which had he walked out the door 10 steps into the parking lot and sat in his car, it's a perfectly fine bet. But since it was 10 steps inside, it's a 6-game suspension. I think the NFL's just gone way too far. Like the pendulum's swung way too much. Like they're trying to make a message. And I think if you find the guy $100,000 and say, if you do this again, it's going to be whatever, 4 games or whatever. Like the message is sent then at that point. But 6 games is kind of like the NFL just going like, haha, look what we did. And now don't we feel so great and high and mighty, where it's like, no, man, this is the precedent has been set for what you can and can't do in the NFL. And we're not going to get off on a tangent here of, again, the DUIs that have only been 4-game suspensions and the other things where like physical harm, it could be happening and all that to other players that I don't know. I get the rules are rules argument. At the same time, the punishment just does not fit the crime in my personal opinion.
No, yeah, I'm agree with you both. We this rule is asinine that we're doing this again. Like for everything that Adam just said, like you can't like. Who cares that where he bets? Like, I mean, you can also have the rule like, oh, he's on company time. Like, again, who cares? Again, I think it's a slippery slope because, like Adam says, every sport there's gambling, whether it's on a sports book or it's on cards or what have you. I mean, there's famous
ping pong in the locker room. They're shooting dice in the corner. Yeah, exactly.
The PGA Tour. I mean, these guys are gambling against each other in the middle of the tournaments, right? Like there's gambling going on in all of these sports in the background, either on the things they're doing or whatever. Like I don't think the leagues really want to open this up, this Pandora's box, because we all know this has been going on. So it then leads to me to believe, okay, if you're really serious about any kind of gambling can't happen in a team facility, what are you doing about that then? Because there's no way you have cracked down on every last bit of that. So it comes back to what you said, is the rule is dumb. There's no reason to be penalizing this. Again, especially when you're taking money. There's not really that many great ways for players to make money off of this other than, collectively bargaining and all of that. But there's sports books in here. There's just nothing that tells me like a player can't gamble on other stuff that's not related to their league. You have not even borderline. You are encouraging that behavior, I think, at this point. So having the rule is just dumb.
Adam, we look at this, and again, like I'm actually surprised that we all agree on this, because I tend to be a little bit more lenient when it comes to that stuff than you guys do. But I think, it's kind of like can't we have cooler heads prevail here? Is common sense even common? Like, can't and we're just speculating here, but it seems like, listen, the punishment needs to fit the crime. We all agree. Do not bet on your sport. You can get inside information. That is something that could affect things. We get that, and we understand that 100%, and you should be punished, and you should get the hammer. Like Quintez Cephas, yes, a year for sure. Like absolutely. But if we look at it feels like the players union should go and say, like, hey, league, we're doing the best we can. We're telling these guys, don't bet on the NFL. If they do it, you do what you got to do. I get all that. But like, if the guy wants to bet on, cornhole, which by the way is one of the things you can bet on, like in the menu, the guy wants to bet on cornhole in the ice bath, right? Because he's bored and he's sitting there in the ice bath and he's betting on cornhole. What are we really doing here? Like, what is the actual crime that is occurring?
Well, you're really testing my maturity talking about cornhole in the ice, but I will. I will.
I just have, because I have a sports book open. And I was like, what's the most egregious thing listed on here? And like cornhole's listed. So I'm like, you know what? If you're betting on cornhole in the ice bath, what do you really do? I mean, what crime are you committing here?
My problem with the Jameson Williams situation is not actually the 6 games. It's the suspension at all, because we have a much bigger issue if we start talking about how NFL discipline is meted out, and everything will go back to Ray Rice for as long as Roger Goodell is commissioner of this league. You set the standard that knocking out your girlfriend gets 2 games, and everything from there is going to be held up into the light by that. And by Tom Brady's deflated balls and 4 games and all of the hoorah that went with that situation. So punishment fitting the crime has to be in some way a little bit more black and white, I think, than gray, because gray talks about how many games and black and white talks about, does this rule make any sense at all in the first place? So yes, betting on NFL games, if you are an NFL player, period, hard stop, no. There's no way in which that is okay. It's not going to be okay in any sport. And so the NFL needs to draw a very, very hard line when it comes to that. But when it comes to, you placed what would otherwise be a legal bet from the wrong place. I mean, you almost set up a situation to me that's sort of like a guy was walking out the door of the team facility when he placed the bet. Where did the geolocation ping pick him up? Right. Was it in the parking lot or was it inside the building? I don't know. How precise is it? We've seen all the maps from GeoComply that show all of those dots, boom, 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 showing up when a launch happens. Was it exactly right? Did we get him in his car, or did we get him right when he got over the threshold of the door? Then we've gone too far when a guy's getting 6 games for essentially that.
I hope there is an appeal, and I hope, again, that just cooler heads prevail here, that common sense prevails. We can make a statement, follow the rules with a monetary fine, with a second offense being a game suspension, whatever it might be. But golly, this 6 games really, really did jump off the page at me a ton.
So what I want to get into, Matt, is what you said at the beginning. What is going, like, everybody knows this at this point. This is the part that's like boggles my mind. Everybody knows that if you're betting on NFL games or you're betting on your own sport, that you're going to get in trouble. Do they think they're not going to get? It can't be you just don't know, right? Like you said, it's almost impossible to believe these players and staffers didn't know this. Does it mean they think it's not, they're not going to get caught? Do they think this is the part that I just don't understand. I can't. And again, I take this over to, am I to believe the NFL is NFL players the only ones where this is happening? Like I reject that as well. The fact that we haven't basically had anybody caught in any other sport in North America is also kind of is hard to believe. You have to suspend your believability to believe that too. So I don't know. Like what do we think is going on in the NFL or in other leagues that this is being caught? Because I think one of those two things has to be true. Either there's something different about the NFL or there's stuff's going underreported.
I guess there is an argument to be made there. I mean, we did see, I guess we wouldn't call the UFC a major sport or whatever. We did see guys go down for it in the UFC and doing all that. But yeah, I mean, I don't I don't know. Maybe there's more, I mean, there's a lot more downtime in the NFL, right? I mean, like you're playing games and stuff and every single day in the Major League Baseball and the NBA. And I don't know. Maybe there's just some of that, but
the rosters are bigger too.
Yeah.
Right. The rosters are bigger. You have more potential players to get caught up in something. I'm not saying that's a cure-all answer, but I do think you have a wider pool to choose from.
Yeah, absolutely. But we're gonna follow this one. I want to update this one to see if anything actually ends up getting done here, guys. As always, everything we do absolutely free. So if you don't mind, hit that little pause button, scroll down, give us a 5-star review. We do appreciate each and every one of those, and does help us climb up the charts, and more people can find this here very podcast.